Alright, welcome back to Stories with Lucas. Um, this story, or today's story, is about one of my neighbors named Miss Furger. She was very special and unique in multiple ways, and so was her house because, we didn't even know she existed. Right behind my house, I had this huge forest that we used to go up into and explore and hang out in, like me and all my friends. And one day I think we were playing airsoft, or maybe paintball. I'm not sure what it was. I think it was airsoft. Um, and everybody was split up into different teams, like some of the neighborhood kids. And my brother's buddy Blake had brought his brother Philip, and Philip was on my team, and we had split up and went taking off up the ridge, like through the forest. And we had gotten to the top, and we're expecting to just find like a really good spot to hide in that could like oversee the whole forest kind of. But instead we found this road. There's like this paved black road. And we were like, what the hell? Like there's a road up here? And I was like, dude, I've lived here my whole life. How have I not noticed that there's a road? And so we ended up walking up to the top of it, like following it up to the very top, and there was a freaking house standing there. And it wasn't just like a regular house. It was like a really, really nice house. Like not a mansion or anything, but it clearly the person that owned this place had a lot of money. And I was like, oh my god. And I was like, dude, this is really cool. And he was like, it's a witch's house. And I'm like, no, it's probably not a witch's house. And I was like, but I mean, it could be abandoned or something. And I was like, let's go explore. And we started walking around and didn't see anybody. One of the things about the house is that they had a huge amount of glass windows. So it was almost like a glass house. So we could see inside it. We could see like TVs and like a huge library. And in the kitchen, we actually could see a parrot. So that's when we knew that somebody had been there recently, obviously at least, or was living there. We started walking over to the back of it and found some sliding glass doors that had looked like they had been shot through. Like they looked like bullet holes. And I was like, oh my god. I was like, dude, somebody just got killed or something like that. Like, how do we not notice or something? And it wasn't unusual to hear gunshots up in my backwoods because they were big enough for people to do that. Like, anybody that wanted to go up and practice shooting. And as far as I know, nobody ever called the cops on anybody when they did that. I mean, even we went up and shot the gun a few times. So anyways, we ran back down and told my mom, and we were like, should we call the cops or something? And she's like, hold on, let's check it out first. Which is like what everybody says right at the beginning of a horror movie. So I was like, okay. But I still had to see how this, went. How this, whole thing was about to play out. And so I rode with her up into the car all the way up to the top, and my mom went up and knocked on the door, and this old woman answered, which kind of for one split second did back up the whole, oh my god, witch thing, because I was like, why would an old woman be living in a house in the middle of the woods? But she was like the nicest person ever, and we were like talking about how we had just found her house and saw the bullet holes, quote unquote. She said that actually wasn't from that. Somebody was trying to like weed whack the back of her porch because a bunch of moss and like weeds and stuff grew on it, and something broke off and flew through her window or some shit like that. I don't know. It was a really weird explanation, but after that, she ended up, loving the company. She was like, oh my god, I love that new people are up here. I know I don't know you or anything, but if you ever feel like coming up and hanging out again, by all means. And so I thought it was really cool. I thought she was cool. And so I ended up visiting quite a few times and hanging out, and she'd let me come in and use the library and whatnot when I wanted to. And she introduced me to her parrot. I do not remember the parrot's name, but it was very loud and knew a couple of words in English, of course. It's a parrot. But Miss Furger was really cool. She had like a pool table downstairs in her basement also that she didn't use. It was a very, very old pool table and other really cool stuff. Yeah, so she had these antique cameras too, and she was collecting them. And I don't know if she ever actually used them, but when I said how cool they were, she ended up giving me one. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome. And my dad was like, you better hold on to that. One day that could be worth a lot of money. And I was like, well, I mean, I kind of like the idea of it just being a gift, but, whatever. Anyways, obviously, because she was an older person eventually, she ended up passing away. I didn't know that, and so I was coming up to visit her one day, and I just saw all these cars everywhere and all these people, and I kind of just walked out of the woods, and we're right up to one of them, and they were like, "What the hell?" And I was like, "Hey, what's going on? Is Miss Furger here?" And they're like, "Oh, actually, she just passed away." And I was like, "Oh my God, no!" And they asked, "Who are you?" And I was like, "Well, I was a neighborhood kid that used to come visit her, and I thought she was really cool." And they were like, "Oh man," and they thought that was really sweet. And I got to know them a little bit, not much. I mean, it was literally that one day I talked to them. Future incidences with them weren't as nice, but we'll get to that. So like a couple of years passed, I think, before we ever ended up visiting again, or not visiting, but exploring after everything happened. It was a group of us, a group of friends, like we all went up there when I told them that there was a house up there, and they didn't believe me. And so obviously when I showed them, they were like, "Holy crap, dude, this is awesome." And so we went up to the front door, and I wasn't expecting it to open or anything, but it did, and the house still had a couple of things in it. There's still a bookcase that still had books on it. There's still stuff in the kitchen. There was still a bed somewhere and stuff in the bathroom, but it was clearly like the house had been abandoned for a long time, and they weren't going to get to cleaning anything or moving anything for quite a while. They kind of just let it sit there. So we ended up just kind of turning it into a hangout place, and it was pretty awesome. After she had died, they had also cut some trees down and revealed that she had a massive view of the lake, like a really, really good view of the lake that wasn't far from us. And I was like, didn't know that either. Like, I could hear the boats and stuff going by, like in the distance, but I didn't realize just how great of a view she would have had if she had cleared some of the trees. And so when we started hanging out there, we would just sit there and use the lawn chairs and just set up right next to the little drained, abandoned pool, the nasty pool full of alligators and slime and moss. We would just sit there on the things and just watch the lake and watch the little boats drive by. Just hang out there, and a couple times we'd, bring up drinks and stuff and food. Like we ordered pizza one night, and this was before we got into partying and stuff, so we didn't drink beer. When we got to that point, when we were drinking beer, my friends were calling it Pepsi. And so they were always trying to say, "Hey man, you want to come over and drink some Pepsi tonight?" And I'm like, "Guys, that's not very clever. I'm pretty sure they can figure out what you're doing." When you're making a big deal about drinking Pepsi in front of our parents, they're probably like, "You mean alcohol?" Yes, that's exactly what was happening. But we were hanging out there one time, and I don't know if somebody just made too much noise, or if maybe we had driven up the driveway. I think that might have been how they got us. Somebody that we invited had driven up the driveway. The people that owned the house, the family still, they came driving up super quick up the driveway one night while we were hanging out. And me and one of my friends were going down the driveway on our bikes, and we could see the headlights coming up really quick. And I was like, "Holy shit, dude, we got to get off the path, hurry," like that. And he got off the path really quickly. And when I tried to, my bike got tangled up in a bunch of vines. And I was like, "Oh, no. This is not the time for this to happen." And I could see the headlights coming around the final corner. And if, they had done that and seen me, I don't know, I would have gotten a lot of trouble. But so I literally just grabbed the bike and with all my strength, just ripped it from the vines and chucked it into the woods and just dove into a bush. And they came barreling around the corner and went up to the top. And we didn't have our cell phones on us. And so everybody that was still up at the top got in trouble. I don't remember what they said or anything, but or what went down exactly, but they did call the cops. The cops were involved at that point, and everybody there had to go home. And I got in a lot of trouble because I was the one that showed them the place, and so all the parents blamed me. And they were saying to some of the people, you can't hang out with him anymore, and blah blah blah. And I was like, what did I do? I mean, we're kids, we're exploring, we're hanging out. People like abandoned buildings. It's kind of cool. But like I said when I first started the story, we used to play games and whatnot. Games like airsoft and paintball, blah, blah, blah. But one of the games, we'd play this kind of horrifying version of tag where we would act like the infected from 28 Days Later. if like the first person would have to act like one, and straight up acting. You can't just run around and go like, I'm infected, or just run up and tag somebody and run off. No, you had to like act like a creepy, messed up zombie that had twitches and would jerk suddenly and make these horrifying noises. So one day in particular, it was like super foggy. It was like super foggy on the little ridge, and it was surrounded by this creepy forest. Obviously, I mean, the forest looked cool most of the time, but when there's like a huge, mysterious, menacing fog like covering everything, it makes it pretty creepy pretty quickly. I mean, it didn't help that in the distance you could hear like coyotes howling, and it sounded like werewolves all around us. But me and a huge group of friends were up there. We're playing that game, the tag game, and I was the best at it. Like, I was the one that committed the most to acting out the role of the infected. I would run around and just absolutely just scare the shit out of people, like running into rooms, and I'd know where they were, but I would want to mess with their fear a little bit, and so I'd act like I didn't know where they were, and I'd get close to them, and then I'd turn around and run out of the room or something, like I heard something, and then I'd make them go like, oh my god, like he was so close, did you see that? Like he could have just reached into the closet and grabbed me. But the best game that we had of that was when there was a chick named Ashton that used to live in our neighborhood, and she wasn't very quick at all, so she was not very good at being the infected, and definitely did not commit to the infected role at all. Like, she definitely didn't make the noises or anything. She managed to chase us around for about an hour and a half and didn't get anybody or something, and she didn't like it. She kept complaining at certain points, but we were having so much fun eluding her and hiding and going to these places that she couldn't reach. And at one point, the fog started rolling in even thicker to where we could barely see in front of us. And we could hear her and other people running around like all over the place. And at one point, I just said, hey guys, let's get on the roof. And so me and a bunch of friends like helped each other get on the roof, and the last person obviously couldn't jump up. We were like, okay, so the last person has to be somebody small, and there was this guy named Eric in our neighborhood who was really, really tiny, and so he was the last guy, so he got everyone else up, and he jumped up, and we pulled him up to the top of the roof, and every single one of us were sitting up there, and Ashton we could see, every once in a while, we could see her little blonde, like, ponytail darting through the fog just somewhere, and that's occasionally we'd hear, oh, come on, guys. This isn't fun anymore. I don't like this. And stuff like that. And, like, when we looked down off the roof, like, we could see the roof all around us, but when we looked down off the roof, it was like a sea of clouds everywhere, just like a sea of fog. And so it looked really cool. Like, I remember this day very well just because of how awesome, and, I mean, it was just cool. It looked really awesome. But she ended up tagging somebody eventually, somebody that was quicker, when we hopped back down in order to continue the game, because we did realize that wasn't fair, because she just was never going to be able to get up, and she started to give up. And then she tagged somebody that was faster, they tagged one of us, and it kept going until eventually all of us were tagged, and blah, blah, blah. But, some more time passed. We stopped visiting as often and whatnot, and one day I went up there by myself just as a walk, or like, for a walk, and saw a bunch of kids hanging out there, and they were shattering windows and breaking stuff, and like breaking into the garage and shattering the car windows, like these antique car windows. And I was like, oh my god. And I tried to say something like, guys, you really shouldn't be doing that, like without straight up sounding like a dick, or, because they were neighborhood kids. I still didn't want, to get the reputation, I guess, of being a loser or like a rule follower. You know what I mean? Just, I didn't want to make like a big deal out of it, but at the same time, I was like, guys, this is kind of disrespectful. And they were like, it's whatever, man. Nobody lives here. And I was like, well, I used to know the person. She was very nice. I kind of feel like I have to say something. I managed to talk them out of doing something while I was there, but they stayed there. And when I left, I'm sure they started breaking windows again. But, it's like a little more time passed, just like everything in this story. And I went back up there again, by myself for another little walk at some point. And while I was up there, I think the night was falling or something, like it was starting to get dark. And so I was just about to head back, but I was walking around on the back part of the house, like the porch, and I saw this bright flash, just suddenly this random bright flash, and I was like, what the hell was that? Was that lightning or something? And it was only once. Like, it only happened once, but, I was like, okay, anyways, don't know what that was. And so I turned around and just went home, didn't think anything of it. And, like, 3 days later in school, our cops or security guards that, like, protect schools, I literally just, I'm blanking on the name, like RO officer or something like that, or I don't know. I don't care. But anyways, yeah, that guy came and pulled me out of class. Like, he said, "Hey, can I talk to Lucas for a minute?" And I was like, "Oh shit." Like that, and I was thinking something bad was happening because at that time my mom was dating this guy named Tommy who was completely insane. He literally, when he started dating my mom, he gave her a fake name and like fake job description and fake everything. So nobody knew who he really was. And they ended up going through a really bad breakup, and he destroyed her room and wrote like obscenities and stuff all over the wall with spray paint, and took my machete that I had gotten from Belize and hacked apart her bed and other stuff. All while my brother was downstairs, and he didn't hear any of this, and he came up at one point and just saw Tommy standing there holding a bunch of cords and just didn't think anything of it. But and went back to playing video games. But yeah, and I also never saw that machete again. But either way, the whole point I was saying this is that I thought he had gotten information on Tommy, or that he was going to tell me that my mom had been hurt or something like that. So I was kind of worried. He sat me down and he showed me a picture immediately. He just set this picture down in front of me, and the first thing I did was I said, "Oh, is this Tommy?" And he went, "Tommy? Tommy who?" And then it was a picture of me, like up at Miss Furger's. And I was like, oh shit. And he was like, "Yeah, oh shit." And I was like, "This is Miss Furger's." And he was like, "Yeah, you realize that there's been like over $100,000 worth of property damage?" And I was like, no, I didn't." And he was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "And we've got you in a picture so we can easily pin this on you." And I was like, "Well, not really. I mean, I didn't do anything. And second off, you don't have a picture of me doing anything, even if I did, you know." But he was like, "Look, man, we could get you in a lot of trouble for this, blah, blah, blah." I don't want to be a snitch. I'm not really a snitch at all. But I wasn't about to go to jail for $100,000 worth of damage that I didn't do, to somebody's house that I respected. And so when he was like, did you see anybody else there or something? I was like, "Actually, yes, there were some neighborhood kids there." And he was like, "Can you name them?" And I was like, "I can name a couple just off the top of my head, but I mean, besides that, like, no, not really." And there were kids that were known for being kind of rambunctious and destructive anyways. But so I did kind of snitch on them. But there was one friend that I had made that was up there with the group, but he wasn't doing anything. So I just didn't simply want to get him in trouble, so I didn't tell on him. And so I got out of that, and I was, I still kind of felt bad for snitching, but like I said, I wasn't going to go to jail, and I never really did snitch on anybody again. But one day I went up for my very last visit with a group of friends, like much later. This is actually when we started to get into the party phase of my life, where I was drinking and smoking weed and stuff like that. We went up for one visit, and we got there and walked in through the front door, just like always when we got up. And I was thinking this time, I was like, "Well, guys, there's cameras everywhere." I even gave them a warning, and one of them still opened the front door to go explore the house. And I was like, "Man, this is not a good idea. This is straight up like giving them the evidence they need to, arrest me. And I don't want to do this." So I just waited outside. And then they came out and they kept wanting to explore more. And finally I could hear the dogs below, like at the person's house that owned the property. I could hear them barking, and I was like, "Oh shit, they did this that one time when they came barreling up the road." And I was like, "Guys, we gotta get out of here." And they're like, "Lucas, stop being such a scaredy cat. All right, we got this. There's nothing to be scared of. Like, you're freaking out, I think. Like, I think you smoked a little bit too much, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "No, seriously, guys, they're going to come up here and, like, get us in trouble. They're going to catch us." And I was like, and they know me. They know I'm one of the neighbors, so they could very easily just go to the neighbors down the hill, on the other side in Montcrest Street, and find me by just like knocking on doors and shit. So I ended up just kind of taking off down in the woods. I was like, you guys can stay if you want. I'm leaving. And they followed me anyways, and we went a completely different direction while we were hammered and, a little high, running down this hill, going through like thorn bushes and shit. And they're like, Lucas, slow down, man. And they're like, yeah, man, you're freaking me out a little bit. And I was like, well, we got to get out of here. Hurry. And we popped out like at this random person's house. We used to call it the mansion. It was another really nice house. Clearly this person had money too. Not as much as Miss Furger did. But we popped up onto their property and came walking out onto their driveway from the woods, like while they were having a barbecue. And we could hear everybody talking and laughing and whatnot. And we tried to be sneaky while we were going by, but somebody ended up saying something when they came out of the woods, like, oh man, that thorn bush hurt. And then everybody at the barbecue went quiet, and we couldn't see anybody, but we could hear them going like, shh, are there people out there? And like, are there people in the woods in the driveway or something? And I was like, guys, we're fucking up. Run. And we all just ran down the driveway and went right up the street to my house and just hung out there. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going back there again. And a couple more years passed, and I was hanging out with my neighbor, my neighbor at the time, and he was a really cool dude. Like, he's a really, really cool dude. And he told me that they finally tore down Miss Furger's house. And I was like, no way, they didn't. And he's like, yeah, they did. And I was like, oh, that's not cool. And he's like, yep, everything up there is gone. Because he used to go up there and explore sometimes too. I think I actually did go up there and see it. Or there's almost part of me that thinks that I never did go up there to see the destruction because I didn't want to see the house gone. Because it was such a cool spot and I loved going there. But like I almost do have that image in my head of the house not being there, but I just can't remember if I actually went there or not to see it. Yeah, that was Miss Furger's house, and the story of Miss Furger. And so now this house is just gone. Nobody knows much about it. Nobody knows anything about it, probably except the family and the people that lived in the neighborhood. It's just one of those memories that you don't want to forget. And I decided to make one of these little podcasts just because I didn't want to forget about this. And I wanted to tell the story to other people because it was so cool. Like hiding up there in the mist, like when you're hiding in the attic and stuff like that, and in the bathroom, and you can hear people running around acting like zombies, and then you're hanging out up there eating pizza and telling stories, trying to scare each other with like scary stories, and playing paintball. I mean, we literally built an entire paintball course up into my woods, and we'd like it took forever to build it too. Like everybody that knew about it would show up for these massive paintball matches, and we would like run around with like wooden shields, like riot shields and stuff. I mean, we went all out on that, and that's how we found it in the beginning. In the first place, is that we were playing paintball or airsoft, something like that. Either way, we still used the course for airsoft too, along with paintball, like not just paintball. But yeah, that's Miss Furger's story. You guys enjoyed that? Please like and subscribe. And I'm gonna make some more of these. And yeah, peace out.